Hey guys, so I wanted to come on here and dive a little bit deeper just because I've become so passionate about this topic of free birth, unassisted birth, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, free birth, I'm not going to go into too much detail on the definition. Is pretty simple. You choose to have your birth at home or wherever, whatever location you want, on your own, free of medical assistance. So no midwife, no doctors, no OB, typically no doula either. Just you, your partner, whoever you choose to be there. And that is what I am going to be doing. Fingers crossed, as long as everything goes good, for my second baby. So I am really excited about it. It's going to be a completely different experience from my first birth that I did in the hospital. Free birth is something I looked into for my first birth, but I psyched myself out. I let fear mongering get the best of my mind. People that had talked to me, stories that I had read, rather than going to the research, going to the hundreds of women's stories who have done this. Way more than 100 people have done it, but there is a large library of people that have shared their stories within what is called the Free Birth Society. There's also videos, and so I've really been diving into all of the research this time around because I just refuse to have the same experience or worse experience that I had for my first birth. Of course, I'm so grateful that she came out healthy, but the experience as a whole was not what I wanted. And so I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into some of the things that went down in my first birth that I don't agree with, why I'm choosing to do things differently this time around. So it might be a little bit lengthy of a video, but yeah, I really am passionate about it the more and more that I learn. So for starters, it was in a hospital, which is not what I wanted at all. If I had the ability to do it at home with a midwife, that is something that I wanted to do. I was, just like I said, very fearful of the whole free birth approach and the fact that I couldn't afford and my insurance didn't cover a midwife. I felt forced into delivering at the hospital. So that is what ended up happening. I went into birth after an ultrasound that I got done at 41 weeks, and literally on the drive home back from the ultrasound, I started having contractions. I am almost positive that I started having contractions because of how forceful the ultrasound felt. She was pushing so much pressure on my baby at my stomach during the ultrasound for over half an hour that I really believe that then triggered the contractions, because I wasn't having any at all before that appointment. So yeah, ended up getting home. They got so intense. I was having them a minute apart in less than an hour period of time. So we got home, turned around, and headed back to the hospital. And the whole drive to the hospital, I was in excruciating pain because, well, if you've contracted in a car, it ended up being like an hour drive because there was traffic. It was during that time of day, rush hour, and being restricted in a car with having to have a seatbelt on makes your contractions way worse, because you're just not able to move. You're not able to breathe the same way. This was my first experience. And so that alone, being able now and going into my second labor and delivery, knowing that I will not have to be stuck in a car for 45 plus minutes or any time at all while I'm laboring, I think will make huge difference. So by the time I got to the hospital, I was still contracting a minute or less apart. And, you know, they do their thing. You get there and they put a monitor on you and they check how dilated you are. And I was at that point less than 3 centimeters, and I was already like really feeling it, and extreme pain. Like, I can say it was pain. And what made it worse was being forced to be on my back on the bed because they had to get a good reading on the baby's heart rate, which now I know is total bogus. And so I was in excruciating pain in like the room that they put you in before you go into your delivery room. And she's like, you have to get to at least a 3 before we can admit you. And so they just left me in there for an hour to see if I progressed. And I did end up progressing between that hour, but it was excruciating. Like I said, not being able to move, just being in that spot with fluorescent lights and all of the things that I didn't want. It was freezing. I was so uncomfortable, and I just felt like I was very constricted. And the nurse on top of it was very, very mean. So there was just a number of things that went wrong. And so I can avoid all of these things having a free birth at home. Then I was admitted. Again, this is my birth story. I don't remember how much detail I went into the whole process of everything that happened and went down, because now that I've reflected over it, over the course of the last 17 months and the last all of the information that I've now learned, I'm reflecting back and I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. And that was really messed up. Things like being given Pitocin without even knowing I was getting Pitocin. I did end up getting an epidural, which of course I did ask for, but I didn't even end up getting it. When I asked for it, I ended up getting it like 2-3 hours after the fact of asking for it. And then they felt the need, even though I was already 10 centimeters dilated, to give me Pitocin, which again, I didn't even know I was getting. Very unnecessary. I was only given ice chips, so no water, no food. You know, I couldn't consume anything because that's just the standard in the hospital. But I have to say, the worst part of it all was being yelled at for 3 hours to push. When I felt absolutely no pressure, no signals from my body that I needed to push, because the epidural did end up making my whole lower half numb. However, I was still feeling the contractions in my lower back area. So it was just a mess. Complete mess, and not at all what I wanted it to be. I believe birth should be and can be for every woman a very sacred, beautiful experience, and that is not at all what I experienced. There was a total of roughly, I want to say, 5 or 6, if not 7, different nurses surrounding me around my bed, 2 of them being the main people yelling to push. They would give me maybe 30 seconds in between, and then, you know, when they saw that I was contracting again, they would tell me to push again, which and some people might listen to this and be like, oh yeah, that's just how it goes. That's not how it should go. And the fact that I did have that epidural and I had the Pitocin, which was kicking up the contractions, the epidural making my entire lower half numb, really took away completely the sensations that I should have been able to feel to help me then and my body to guide me into pushing the baby out. One huge thing that I have been learning so much about, and that I'm going to be applying in my second birth, is the natural fetal ejection response, which everyone is capable of. So what that essentially is your body will naturally push your baby out. Yes, it may still feel like you are pushing, but your body will actually push on its own without you even trying. And you can breathe your baby out. And it doesn't need to be this forced, constant pushing when you don't feel ready, which a lot of the time is what ends up causing tears. I was very lucky in the sense that even though I was pushing with all my might for 3 hours, I only ended up tearing first-degree tears, what they call it in the hospital. So it could have been much, much worse. And so many people have much worse experiences where they even get the episiotomies and the doctor's like, we got to give you this. And they will cut you up to your butt through your vagina to allow to have more space to get the baby out, which is completely invasive and unnecessary. If you were allowing the woman the time to breathe their baby out. But because it is a hospital and it is a business, they need to get you out of that room so they can get another woman in to deliver their baby. Whereas when you're home, you're not rushed and you can actually push the baby out, have the head out for quite some time, completely safe, until you feel now ready to breathe out the rest of your baby. Whereas in my experience at the hospital, when the head was not even fully out, they forcefully pulled my baby out very aggressively, from what my husband said. He was terrified watching it. I didn't get to see it, rather than allowing me to breathe the rest of their body out, the rest of her body out. And so there's so many things, and I'm not good about shortening my trains of thought when it comes to these types of videos, but that was, I have to say, hands down, the worst part of the experience. Just feeling completely out of my body, exhausted from pushing, sad from the experience that I was having. It felt like all the breath work and breathing practice that I did throughout the 10 months of preparing for my labor and delivery just didn't matter. It didn't matter at all, because I didn't get to apply any of it except maybe a little bit of the breathing practice while I was waiting for the epidural. And so I'm very much looking forward to having a completely different experience in the comfort of my home, birthing wherever feels best to me, whether it be right here in my bedroom, in the living room, in a birthing pool, or in my bathtub. Being able to move, not being hooked up to a monitor, not having an IV in me, not being forced unnecessary medication, which is only going to intensify my contractions, not being forced onto a bed, not being forced to push when my body is clearly not ready. And I believe that because I had to push, and they were forcing me to push, and I couldn't feel how to properly push because I was numb. That is why I ended up pushing for so long, that my daughter came out, you know, in their case, they made it a very emergency situation. So she came out and she didn't cry right away, which now I know is completely normal. Some babies are just a lot slower to come into the world. They don't need to cry right away. The most important thing is when they come out, that they're improving as they are out longer and longer. I didn't have the opportunity to do the skin to skin for more than just a couple minutes, because they gripped my baby away from me, started suctioning and rubbing her very aggressively over on the little station that they had. I saw there was probably a total of 15 people in the delivery room. It felt like an emergency, which then of course took any oxytocin rush away from me that I would have had. I didn't get that initial joyful experience, joyful feelings, because she was pulled away and they were worrying me because of how they were reacting to her not crying right away. And until she let out that full cry, nothing was okay. And this is just so far from the truth. If they would have given me the opportunity to do skin to skin, and just give her the time to come into the world, give me the time to rub her, start nursing her immediately, and things of that nature, it would have been completely different. There's so many things, going all the way back to all of the unnecessary prenatal visits, unnecessary ultrasounds. Yeah, the list goes on. And so this is just me kind of dipping my toes into starting to talk about this more, the more and more that I learn about it. If you're interested, if anyone is interested, you can drop any questions you have down below. Again, I'm not giving any medical advice at all. I'm just sharing what I am learning. All of the information that I'm getting is from the Birth Society, their courses, as well as the personal experiences that hundreds of women have shared through the podcast, as well as through their labor and delivery videos. And yeah, it's truly amazing. So if you're interested, I highly recommend checking them out. But if you have any questions on specifically what my thoughts are, opinions on my experience, I'm happy to answer them and maybe do some more detailed videos on specific questions. If you are interested, because like I said, I am just full force diving into all things free birth, unassisted birth, physiological, natural birth. And I think it's a really beautiful thing. So thank you if you stayed for this whole video. I appreciate it. I probably should have made it a YouTube video or something, but I don't do those that much. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing and talking to other mamas and women about this topic. And yeah, so see you soon.